Hello, good evening. After a long time, we get back into a series of In My View, and one needs to talk about a number of issues which have been happening in so many parts of the world. So the series now gets rolling, and as far as is possible, we would keep doing this in the context of current affairs, as far as national and international importance are concerned, and try bringing in as many number of perspectives as is possible to events which are happening at a certain sort of rapidity. This time around, the series would be done both in English as well as in Marathi. And so, as far as that one is concerned, this is the first episode that we would be doing, which is related to the assembly elections which have recently taken place in India in the context of five states: Punjab, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Goa, and Manipur. So we would be touching base as far as these five assemblies are concerned, not worrying our heads about the minutiae in terms of how many parties, how many votes, and so on and so forth, but rather looking at them in as broad a perspective as is possible, and rather looking at what sort of implications and what sort of directions does these elections point us to as far as the emerging polity in India itself is concerned. So it's from that perspective that this episode would be focusing on issues which are related to the Punjab elections, issues which are related to the elections in the other assemblies, and what exactly is it that one can make as far as the emerging polity itself is concerned. So the first thing that strikes one as far as these elections are concerned, and of course there's a big mismatch in terms of the way in which these elections have happened and the sort of issues which are getting talked about them. And one needs to sort of focus as far as the mismatch itself is concerned. So people are worried about the implications as far as these elections are concerned related to the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Not at all being cognizant of the fact that an Indian election at the end of the day, especially when it comes to the state assemblies, is a state assembly election. There's not much that one can say in terms of what would happen as far as the next 24 odd months are concerned, and how exactly would what has happened as of now as far as the five assemblies are concerned impact things in terms of what would happen in May 2024. So there's quite a way to go. There's quite a lot which is yet to happen. And in the light of rapid developments, both as far as polity and economy are concerned, society and economy are concerned, there's a lot which is going to go about influencing things in 2024. A couple of points in terms of what are the features as far as these elections are concerned, and what sort of things does it point out in terms of the fact that this is the first poll that comes at the end of 3 decades of economic liberalization in India. So in 1991, the process of economic reforms in India started. And one can for sure say that we are yet not a fully well-formed capitalist economy. There's something half-baked about the way in which this is happening. And that is producing the sort of political implications that it is producing. So what's happening on one hand is the process of reform has yet not got to a point wherein one can say that the Indian citizen as well as the Indian entrepreneur is fully liberated from the shackles of the state. So the way in which he is enmeshed in the different networks of regulation, governance, and it's in the context of all of this that one needs to make sense of what's happening as far as these elections are concerned. Even in the case of small states like Goa, what one witnesses is a situation wherein there are multiple political players. So for a state wherein average number of voters happen to be somewhere between 30 to 35,000, Goans this time had a lot to choose from. So you had almost 5 to 6 different political parties that you were choosing from. You had at least 2 to 3 different independents that you were choosing from. And for 35,000 voters, that seems quite a lot. The economy has clearly stalled as far as growth is concerned in the last couple of years. And it's in that sort of a situation that it has created. So on one hand is the larger picture in terms of the fact that most reforms in India have now reached a point wherein it seems that the state just doesn't want to give up on a number of controls as far as the functioning of the economy is concerned. Then there's a whole problem of stalled growth. And then there's a problem of the massive sort of inequalities that the economy has thrown up in the absence of complete capitalization, and state which has the will to exercise power but necessarily does not have the resources for the same, both at the level of the human resources as well as at the level of the physical resources. So, but it has a very strong will. It has a very strong will in terms of regulating the functioning of the economy. And it's in that context that one looks at Goa, a state wherein the three major parties, the BJP, the Congress, and the MGP, with the Goan Forward Party, cornered almost 35 of the 40 seats in the assembly. But close to 27-28% of the vote has been cornered by parties which have a very minimal presence in the assembly, almost a zero presence. So you have the Goa Revolutionary Party, the Goans Revolutionary Party, which has just one MLA. We have AAP, which has 2 MLAs. But the total number of votes that they have gone home with is close to almost 28 to 30% of the vote. So, and that produces the sort of result that it does go about producing. In the first place, the whole problem of the BJP coming back to power after almost 10 years in power and 10 years of not a very edifying sort of a stint in power. So, how does one explain the fact that they have got back into power at the head of a government which almost has 20 seats out of 40? So technically speaking, they can, had it been in a Western, European country, they could very well have it gone about running a minority government all on their own. Though the government would be supported, it would stabilize at least till the elections of 2024. And after that, the old Goan game of playing musical chairs would once again begin. So on one hand is a half-form economy, or half-form capitalist economy, which spurs the ambitions as far as a lot of people are concerned in terms of taking the plunge and trying to get into politics and trying to secure a position for themselves. Most Goan candidates who have won elections as far as the state is concerned are candidates who are phenomenally rich and well off, except for the Revolutionary Goan Party, whose candidates are in terms of economy and basis as far as the economy are concerned, are fairly underdeveloped as far as other candidates, especially from the established parties, are concerned. AAP did try to play in Goa the Bhandari card with a chief ministerial candidate who had a clean image and this whole idea that he was a white-collar professional and came from Goa's largest caste community, namely the Bhandaris. And Mr. Amit Parikar could not win even in his own seat. So much for this whole idea of Bhandari caste mobilization. At almost 30%, it was believed that they would almost see AAP through. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So the Goan candidate, more than looking at the caste profile, more than looking at the community profile of the candidate, is more interested in terms of what sort of clout would the candidate carry once elected in the offices of power, and what sort of clout does a candidate have to sustain himself and his voting base as far as the constituency itself is concerned. So a search for candidates who are rich, a search for candidates who are very resourceful, maybe even out of the box resourceful, but nevertheless candidates who would be in a position to carry the clout and would be in a position to support the voting base, as well as, if need be, expand the voting base. Goa's problem being small constituencies, small number of voters, wherein practically every single voter in some way or the other, as far as the major political parties are concerned, is enmeshed in the different sorts of enterprises, economic activities that these candidates run, in addition to running for a public office. And most Goan voters find that in some way or the other, they are connected with these enterprises. They are very well in as far as these enterprises are concerned. It becomes very difficult to sort of say no to a candidate, wherein it would seem like a result wherein they have almost swept away the system. At the opposite end of the country, the sort of result that we had in the Punjab, one just doesn't know as to why does in a state like Goa, which has comparatively speaking better indices as far as human development is concerned, as far as the economy itself is concerned, and with voters who are so self-aware, so deeply political, and have a very good base in terms of very cleverly and subtly changing candidates when need be, in terms of the people who would represent them in the assembly. But system changing, a system sweeping change has not been witnessed, and possibly would not be witnessed. And one of the reasons why that happens is precisely because of the inequality which has been induced by these economic reforms, wherein there are some people who would be resourceful enough to run for public office, but the larger mass of voters finds that it just is not in a position to go about exercising its franchise in a way wherein a whole system can be said to have had been swept away. A number of people who would not be there in this assembly and who have been a fixture as far as the Goa legislature has been concerned from the times since the 1960s itself, is just one big standout factor as far as this election is concerned. Yes, the Alamaus have been defeated, undoubtedly, for all the clout, for all the influence, for all the resources which they have. But one of the Alamaus, that's Yuri Alamau, who was a Congress candidate and who was a cousin of Valanka Alamau, has also reached the assembly. So on one hand, it seems that the voter was definitely trying to look out for a change, but somehow the other was not very convinced by the sort of change which was on offer. A change in which it seems that there would be more of the same, rather than something that would be a distinct and a strong disruption with the past. So the Kavekars have been defeated, the Alamaus have been defeated. Every election does produce those types of heartburns as far as a couple of people are concerned. And every election also continues with a couple of faces like the Monsarats, husband and wife. For the first time, Goa's assembly would be seeing 6 MLAs who are spouses to each other. So 3 couples, 2 from the BJP and 1 from the Congress, would have had reached the assembly. And this also is a different sort of a situation. 6 out of 40 is a substantive thing as far as the House itself is concerned. So all in all, the sort of problems as far as a state as small as Goa, with the sort of issues which have been plaguing its economy for the past couple of years. So a break with mining, a break with tourism, which is deeply consumerist, deeply exploitative as far as resources, as well as the human beings working in the industry are concerned, was something that was expected for quite some period of time, but definitely was not delivered. So that's one way by which one can start looking at this entire phenomenon as far as the election is concerned. And then at the other end of the country, you have Punjab, wherein with 92 Aam Aadmi Party MLAs getting elected in a house of 117, this election seems to be of the variety wherein there has been a system change. So it's not just faces which have been changed, it's not just parties which have been changed, but it's almost a systemic change. A whole way of doing business has been swept away. And obviously for a lot of people who ever since Mamata Banerjee did not rise up to their expectations since the last assembly elections in 2021. So the last assembly elections happened in the summer of 2021, and the Trinamool Congress swept Bengal in the way in which it did. And there was this buzz of the variety that one gets to see on Indian television, and people who are related to media as well as to audiovisual media as well as social media, in terms of perspectivizing related to politics in India. So the whole idea was that Trinamool is going to emerge as some sort of an alternative to the BJP across the country. And the Trinamool fairly early imploded in Goa and just did not go anywhere. In the other states, it was anyway not a big player at all. It just didn't contest seats in any of the other states. So the Trinamool almost is a subdued sort of a story, which no longer is referred to and is no longer talked about. But then instead of Trinamool, those types of commentators, those types of viewers who were very keen in terms of building up a sort of competition as far as visuality is concerned, as far as the purpose of the media are concerned. They have already pitted the BJP in a certain corner under Modi, and what they're looking out for is a boxer in the opposite corner who can take on this challenge. So the entire way in which news media in India gets built up around this whole phenomena of electoral politics, especially AAP's performance in Punjab, forgetting the fact that in the same round of elections, AAP was also a contender in Uttarakhand, AAP was also a contender in Goa. In Goa, it could win 2 seats, but then it most of the time seems that the 2 seats that AAP has cornered in Goa are seats not for AAP, but are seats against the established candidates. One of them being Churchill Alemao, that has been defeated. And then in the other case, in Uttarakhand, they did get an impressive 6.7% of the vote, but they could not get any seats. So one needs a better understanding in terms of why could AAP click in Punjab, but in next door Uttarakhand, AAP simply flopped. There was no talk of AAP. And in both the states, they are more or less marketing the same model. So the same idea of, look, we have done something in Delhi as far as schools are concerned, as far as hospitals are concerned, as far as doorstep delivery of services is concerned. And we could do the same if given a chance in Uttarakhand as well as in Punjab. The Punjab voter accepted the premise. The Uttarakhand voter just did not. And instead of focusing on why is there a difference as far as the 2 states are concerned, you have commentators, viewers, spectators who are more happy about this, that at least as of now, the position of Jerry against Tom seems to have had been filled up. Punjab's vote is not so much, at least on the face of it, a vote for AAP. Punjab's vote very dramatically is a vote against all the established parties. It should be particularly very stinging for the Shiromani Akali Dal, which in the centenary year of its establishment has been so comprehensively wiped out from the state. It's particularly galling as far as the Congress is concerned, on account of the fact that for the last 5 years, the way in which it conducted government, it almost felt on the verge of the elections that it was entitled to a stint in power. But the way in which they have been swept away, not as comprehensively as the Shiromani Akali Dal, but definitely not in any way less humiliatingly as compared to whatever the Shiromani Akali Dal was, is the position as far as the Congress is concerned. What stands out are a couple of things as far as the Punjab is concerned, and they just need to be sort of at least brought as points that need to be debated and talked about. This whole idea of Panthic identity, this whole idea of the Shiromani Akali Dal is equal to Sikhism, is an idea that it seems the Punjab voter is no longer ready to buy. And the way in which Akali stalwarts have been defeated across the state, it seems that the Punjab voter is definitely ready to move in a direction which says that for us, the Shiromani Akali Dal no longer represents in some way or the other the sort of comprehensive representation of the Sikh community that it once upon a time did. So that's one thing that stands out as far as the whole phenomenon is concerned. The other big thing that stands out as far as the whole phenomenon is concerned is something that is related to the performance of the Bahujan Samaj Party and the performance of the Congress under Mr. Channi, who was appointed as the Chief Minister in the last almost 4 months in the run-up to the assembly elections. And what stands out in that case was this whole idea that we have given the state a Dalit Chief Minister, something which has not been done ever in the history of the state. And with 30% of the state's voting population being Dalit, the party can just sail across into the offices of power. And it seems that the voter just did not accept even this premise. The same is the problem with the BSP. The state happens to be the birthplace the state of birth as far as Mr. Kashiram was the founder of the BSP is concerned. And the BSP was brought into the SAD alliance precisely on account of this idea that the best way by which you can counter the Channi premise of the Congress is to be in a tactical alliance with the BSP. And even that seems to have had exploded off. It seems that the Punjab Dalit voter just does not have the same level of problems that, say, for example, the Dalit voters in Uttar Pradesh or in Uttarakhand have, wherein they need to be the voting publics as far as the BSP is concerned, to feel a certain sense of numbers and security that comes with it. Here it seems that the voter was looking for something more than identity. So something that would cater to the idea of identity in as primitive a way as, look, we have appointed someone from your community as a chief minister, and why don't you all give the party a chance? So they definitely did make a certain sort of a distinction between your intention to lure them with the idea of a Dalit chief minister and the problems that they face in terms of the fact that everyday life has definitely not changed in any way on account of the fact that you have appointed a Dalit chief minister. And a Dalit chief minister, most of the time coming from the old mold. The reason why the AAP's idea of schools and hospital clicks in the Punjab, but not in Uttarakhand, which actually has a lesser number of such establishments as compared to the Punjab, is not so much in the fact that Punjab doesn't have schools or hospitals. It very much has schools and hospitals. But the way in which, for almost the last 3 decades, starting off from 1997, when this new round of politics in Punjab starts off, when the parties keep on alternating in power, the Punjab voters' problem is schools and hospitals are there. Colleges, universities, everything is there. But the way in which the parties have, in some way or the other, manipulated the entire system to their benefit without producing any tangible change in the lives of the voters on the ground. So the entire structure of running these schools, the entire structure of running these hospitals seems to be something that comes with unaccountable outcomes. The outcomes have never been well audited. The outcomes have never even been well decided. And money keeps getting spent on all of this. Punjab, incidentally, of all the states going to the polls, is the most indebted state. And one of the reasons why the public debt is so high in the Punjab as compared to the state's GSDP is precisely on account of the populist schemes which the governments have been running in the state. AAP promised 300 units of free power. Punjab already is a state which is providing free power as far as the farmers in the state are concerned. So, and one of the reasons why the state's public debt has gone up in the last 5 years is precisely on account of the increasing net as far as the beneficiaries themselves are concerned. So the total number of beneficiaries who benefited from the state's subsidies and free ship schemes in 2017 as compared to that in 2022, now we have more people who are part of the net. The more the better, it seems, for a very simple reason, because in that sort of a situation, siphoning of funds for purposes other than delivering benefits to the people on the ground becomes much more easier. And that is what was being opposed. So the reason why AAP got elected is not because Punjab doesn't have schools or hospitals. It's because the schools and hospitals have been monopolized, have been manipulated in a way wherein it benefits the politicians running the show rather than the voters in the state. And in a state where you would find the largest number of NRIs who have been campaigning, coming from as abroad as Canada, to campaign in the elections, moving out across the villages, definitely they don't have the same sort of anxieties that the voters in, say, for example, next door Uttar Pradesh would have. So from a certain sort of a position of a relative sort of comfort, the whole idea being that we don't want to be served by this lot of politicians. We had enough of them. We tried changing them for the last 3 decades, and that just doesn't have work for us. So what needs to be done is we need to give a chance to people who are completely different as compared to these people, who are not related to them, who in no way are beholden to them. And that's the reason why AAP gets swept up in the way in which it gets swept up. A Congress which refuses to own up a chief minister, refuses to stand resolutely by him, lets the state party Congress chief keep on backbiting and sniping at the chief minister after he's been appointed in the last 4 months was definitely not a good advertisement for something which said that we need another chance. So the way in which you have managed the state, so for 4.5 years, the state is governed by somebody that in the last 6 months you just dispense off with, and then you bring in somebody that you don't even want to stand by, don't even want to support, is definitely not the way by which you conduct politics in a country like India. And obviously, the Congress in Punjab playing this game that, to use a metaphor from a completely different contemporary situation, the Congress tried to play a game of being a party of both the Bolsheviks as well as the Romanovs. And in a world before the 1990s, that's exactly what the Congress was. This whole idea that the party is a big tent party that goes about accommodating different sorts of economic and social interests, which most of the time are contradictory to each other, worked at some point of time in the context of an economy which is supposedly moving towards full capitalization and becoming a market economy. Does this at all work now, especially when the top leadership is not in a position to exercise any of the social, the political, the ethical capital that it has to reconcile the differences in the party, at least to put up a united face? So where you're not in a position where you possibly don't even have that capital any longer, when you can get your party in some sort of a form and in some sort of a discipline right from the top to the bottom, it just explodes. And that's exactly what has been seen in the Punjab. Thank you.
Subscribe the Unique Academy's YouTube channel and press the bell icon for latest updates and videos.